All right, welcome to the Daily BA. My name's Ryan O. Today's Friday, so we're gonna do something a little bit different, and that is today's episode is on this. Everything is a hashtag ad. Let's go. All right, so advertisement as defined by Google, because Google is the one that runs kind of everything nowadays, or may potentially in the future. So it's a noun, the activity or profession of producing advertisements for commercial products or services. So movie audiences are receptive to advertising. Now, the point here is advertising comes in a bunch of different forms, and those forms, as like open and blatant and clear as they are the ones we usually dislike. And I totally relate to this myself. The first thing that I do when I get a new computer is download AdBlock. I want to make sure that the things that are particularly in front of content that's just like this, that I don't have to experience them. But a very clear thing in our field is that we have a hard time breaking through in the mainstream, and I think it's something we could get much more clear about and direct about, and we could actually understand if we branched out and understood what it is that other fields were doing in particular, as well as the folks in advertising and marketing. So why do people do this? Plain and simple, it works. It's a percentage game largely, and so depending on the channels that you're reaching, a certain volume works. Now, a couple of terms if you want to research in this more, there's obviously the demographics, and that is the large different characteristics in which a lot of these apps and different social media sites lump us based on age and those sort of factors. But there's also psychographics, and this is an area that when I first heard of it from an advertising marketing friend of mine, I was like, hey, that's kind of sounds much more in line with behavior analysis. And it is. They're looking at the tendencies of people based on some sort of psychological framework. Now, on the other side of the coin is that these things are just downright annoying. And there's others that have said, I'll link a HubSpot article below. It's a blog that I followed quite a bit a couple years ago, and just showing that after about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when the internet age started really coming about, these sort of traditional styles, they just weren't working anymore. So the question is, like, what can we do about this? This is a quote by Dan specifically. He says, more than half of consumers feel ads are insulting to their intelligence, according to research by HubSpot and AdBlock Plus. Another 63% feel that these ads don't look professional. If that doesn't convince you of the futility of online advertising, maybe this will. Just 7% of consumers find them compelling. Online ads are not just hard to like, they're deceptive, unimaginative, inefficient, and ineffective. Man. Crazy, right? Now, I can totally understand this, and that's part of the reason I want to explore these sort of mediums here of content creation, is just like what kind of works under what scenarios. Because at the end of the day, our field's really struggling and having a hard time of branching outside of certain walls, in my opinion. And so the question kind of comes, where did all this specific rant come from, or this video, and that is, I think our field has a hard time understanding how to support the people that are trying to figure these sort of things out. Now, I don't expect them to necessarily, want ads thrown up all over their Facebook groups or throughout their different forums and such. But the people that are genuinely trying to do this oftentimes are looking for feedback, and it can be hard to discriminate. And there's also this sense of we see each other kind of as enemies, and I think that's ridiculous. We all value and enjoy this science. I mean, there's a reason that we're all going to these conferences, enjoying things. We might see things a little bit differently, but we all want to see it prosper. So for those of us that are trying to figure out how that actually gets achieved, sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of help. And so there's this last perspective to really hit, and that is that advertising's really everywhere. Now, these sort of things, booths, lots and lots of booths. Those are much more blatant than if I were to say be commenting as an expert on something, right? At the end of the day, commenting as an expert perhaps, which is totally agreed and very useful when it comes to our field, when it's emails, contributing in forums and special interest groups and different capacities in Facebook or Twitter or such. Those sort of things don't come off as an ad, but the question is, are they functioning as an ad? And if so, for what? And how are we going to handle that as a field? We're at a point now where it's time for us to really tackle these issues, and especially if we want to see this field disseminate into some of the visions that our forefathers and foremothers had. And so it kind of comes back to this question of function versus typography. Are we interested in a certain form of advertisement, or are we interested in the function? And at the end of the day, I don't think it's the function necessarily that we're so worried about, it's the typography. Creating rules around typography is very tricky, and it's also, as we know, hard to actually work with in our field. So I don't have a particular answer for this myself. I think at the end of the day, a lot of places struggle with just what is appropriate behavior in these circumstances and not. But I cautious us in not spending enough time to really think these things out. That and the typical treatments in our field are usually centered around typography as opposed to function, which we know at the heart of it is just not how we're supposed to be handling these sort of things. Now what I'm going to do is also provide a resource and link below to Ostrom's 8 principles. It's a very cool way to essentially look at our field in the sense of we all have different things that we're potentially going to try to leverage, and how could we do that. It's not perfect, but it is something to check out. I've used it in different groups to various different degrees to try to create appropriate contingencies for kind of a governing body. So check it out. And that's your Daily BA. I don't know if you caught it, but at the beginning I specifically held this up just to kind of drop in a little bit of a funny there. So.